Hello, my friends. I'm going to tell you today's video topic. Today's review is the Bette Davis film from 1939 called Dark Victory. And this is the Bette Davis film for people who love Bette Davis. I'm not going to say that it's her best performance that I've seen, but it is one of her most interesting performances. So if you want to find out why it's one of her most interesting performances, stick around and I'll tell you. And if you like what I do, please give me a subscription on YouTube, a follow on Spotify, and leave a comment as always.
With his heart bursting and a water jump ahead of him, and he'll fold up on you.
Michael, you might fold up, and I might fold up. But that horse has the breeding.
So, Bette Davis stars in this film, and it also stars George Brett, Geraldine Fitzgerald, Humphrey Bogart is in this film, and Ronald Reagan is also in this film. But there's so many things to talk about. We can talk about Bette Davis's performance. We can talk about Bette Davis's life around the performance, and we can talk about the actual film. So I'm going to spoil the plot of the film a little bit, just because I think that it's important to understand the film, and I think me talking about the plot is not actually going to ruin it for you. You can see it, you can watch it, and still enjoy it. So Bette Davis is playing the character of Judith. I'm not going to pronounce that last name. People kind of criticize me when I pronounce names of movies, so I'm not going to do it. But she plays Judith. And Judith is a woman in the beginning who seems to be struggling with some health problems. So finally, she is diagnosed that she has a glioma. And I had to look this up because I didn't quite know. But a glioma is a growth in the brain. And it's not necessarily a cancerous growth. It can just grow in your brain for reasons we still don't understand. And they definitely didn't understand in 1939. But in this case, it was cancerous because it was growing and it was affecting her vision and giving her headaches. So she has a surgery, and in her mind, the surgery was successful because she feels really good, she feels healthy, and she's gotten like a renewed vigor. And then the doctor, the surgeon who performs the surgery, they fall in love and they get married, and she dies because, I'm sorry, that's the big spoiler. She dies in the movie because she didn't actually get better. Because the doctor and her friend lied to her, which is an interesting idea, which we'll park for a moment. We'll get back to that. We'll talk about that in a moment. Why the film is actually interesting is because, and Bette Davis's performance is interesting, is because it's broken into certain parts. So the first part of the film, she's playing this sort of like aggressively chipper character, kind of like Katharine Hepburn. And it's weird because these are two major Hollywood stars, and they came from the same place geographically, and they had a bit of a rivalry, but people don't really connect Katharine Hepburn and Bette Davis, weirdly. I think they kind of disrespect Bette Davis's acting skills, and they kind of make Katharine Hepburn, a better actress than she is. I don't know. Maybe I'll get into Katharine Hepburn also, but so I don't want to say anything bad about her performances. But anyway, we're talking about Bette Davis. So she's playing this like aggressively chipper, smart kind of person, and it's really annoying, right? But the reason it's annoying is because it's a cover. She's a woman who leads sort of an empty life, and she is suffering physically. She's really afraid of her health, but she doesn't want to admit it. So she has this sort of like she has this cover that everything is going well. And the next part of the film is she sees a doctor and she gets diagnosed with this brain tumor, and the doctor removes the brain tumor. And as I said about the plot, she feels that she recovers. So she's given this sort of like new lease on life, and this sort of like aggression in her chippiness, in her cheerfulness is gone. And you can see that she genuinely has this sort of like good nature. And so you see that in Betty Davis's performance too. It's not the writing that's doing this storytelling, it's her actual acting, which is great. And then she discovers that she's been lied to because of the doctor and her friend who didn't want to tell her that she's actually still gonna die. And then you have, so first you had like this aggressive cheerfulness trying to hide her pain, and then you had the pain gone, so the cheerfulness was there, but then the pain comes roaring back, but more of a metaphorical pain, and the aggression is there now and none of the cheerfulness. So she leads sort of like a debauched life. She's doing whatever she wants. She's drinking because she's dying. Who cares? And then she has a heart-to-heart talk with the person that she loves, which is this doctor, and they do get married and they have this thing. And at the end, it's kind of like not cheerfulness, but happiness and peacefulness. And she realizes that her death is not going to be a problem for her. It's going to be a problem for people around her, actually, because they will go on. Like, Celine Dion says, my heart will go on. They'll go on and they'll continue to suffer in their lives. So I said that it wasn't my favorite Betty Davis performance, but thinking about it now, I kind of convinced myself that it is, actually, because of this character arc that she's doing, which is really, really good. And for 1939, it's brilliant acting. And I think that maybe somebody might see it superficially as being a bit over the top, but I think it's helping to tell this story. Now we can talk about the actual interesting part about the movie. I mean, Betty Davis's performance is really, really interesting, but the movie raises two philosophical questions that are quite interesting, and you could use this movie as a sort of introduction to these topics in a philosophy or an ethics class. So the first one is, if you were dying, would you want to know? So Betty Davis is angry that they lied to her, and I don't know what the situation is now with doctors, and because I know in the past they legitimately did not tell people that they were dying because they thought, what's the point? Let them live their lives. But on the other hand, if you know you're dying, then like I feel that you could, get your affairs in order, like make funeral arrangements or whatever. But that's just how I feel now. And actually thinking about it, it would be devastating because like you think that you have control over that by knowing, but you don't have control over it. You'll die anyway, whether you know or you don't know. And time is short regardless. So I can kind of understand the reason that a doctor wouldn't tell you. And maybe they still do this. Like, it's not on the same level, but I injured my elbow. I broke 2 bones in my elbow before Christmas, and I was convalescing for 6 months, and not 6 months, 6 weeks. And when I went to the physiotherapist, they were like, yeah, you'll recover, no problem. We'll talk to the doctors, couple times during this time period because, you need x-rays and stuff. And they're like, yeah, you'll recover. So I go to the final meeting with the first doctor that I saw. And she was like, in the beginning, she was like, yeah, you'll recover. She said, you're never going to be 100%. And I thought, why didn't you tell me that in the beginning? So she said, your arm is always going to be a bit crooked. It's never going to be straight again because of the way you broke it. And I thought, why didn't you tell me that in the beginning? And I know why she didn't tell me that, because, not working and not being able to go outside because it was really cold winter, it was depressing enough. She didn't really need to heap that on me. But I guess it's a philosophical question, and I'm not a doctor, so I never had to make this decision. But I don't really know what's right, because on the one hand, people have the right to know about their bodies. But on the other hand, if their body is giving out anyway, they have a right, their mind has a right to be protected. So that's the first question that's interesting. The second question that's interesting is a little bit different because, well, in this film, the doctor character, who is played by George Brent, Dr. Frederick Steele, what a great name for doctor. He falls in love with Judith, Betty Davis's character, and they get married. But generally, doctors don't date their patients, right? So that's kind of an ethical question as well. And I think that he fell in love with her because she was dying. I think that was the reason he was like, yeah, I can marry her, and that's okay because I'm just giving her happiness because she's going to die anyway. And Betty Davis's character is really upset about that, and the movie kind of portrays it like she is incorrect, but she feels like the doctor just says that, like a little child, like, it's okay, we'll get married, you'll be fine, everything will be fine. And Betty Davis, Judith, the character, rightfully resents that. And I think that it is true. Like, he does love her, but he's marrying her as kind of like patting the little kid on the head, like everything is going to be okay. So yeah, it's interesting. It's a very interesting film. About the background, and I didn't do a lot of research about the background of Betty Davis's life when she was making this film, but I just read that she had gotten out of 2 affairs, and she felt like she was sick and she wanted to get out of the contract for this movie. And people were like, yeah, that's you sick. You should play every movie sick because this is really wonderful. Which is true. It is a great performance. And I don't know if she fell in love with him, but she definitely had an affair with, I don't want to mispronounce his name, with George Brent. She had an affair with him, and she said she didn't want to marry him for some reason or another. She thought that it wouldn't work out. But later she said that that was the one relationship she regretted, that it didn't continue. And I can see that they have a chemistry, definitely. But I think it would be very easy to have a chemistry with Betty Davis because she's kind of like I think we all know characters like that in our lives, like these bright, intelligent women who talk like maybe 3.5 times speed quicker than everybody else, but their brain is saying really clever things, so you have to process that. So I think that's the kind of character that Betty Davis was. So should you watch Dark Victory? I did tell you most of the plot. I did tell you the character work that Betty Davis is doing, but I think it doesn't matter. This is one of those movies where the performance is so good you don't care that you know exactly what happens in it. So I would recommend, if you haven't seen 1939's Dark Victory starring Betty Davis, go out and watch it. And I didn't even talk about the other actors. I didn't talk about Ronald Reagan, who surprisingly does a good job as a drunken guy. And I didn't talk about Humphrey Bogart, who also has a little bit of a plot there. He's okay, but he doesn't overpower the film like with another film that I saw starring him and Betty Davis. I think that was called The Painted Desert or something like that. It has a longer title than that. I've done a review on the channel, so you can check it out. Right, so I asked you in the beginning of this review, if you liked my work, to leave a like, to subscribe, and leave a comment. So if you like my work, please do that. I'm trying to get to 1,000 subscribers by the end of March, which is probably unlikely, but who knows. All right, thanks everybody. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.
With his heart bursting in a water jump ahead of him, and he'll fold up on you.
Michael, you might fold up, and I might fold up. But that horse has the breeding.